is. And necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And so I had to begin to tell stories in those press releases that would be provocative to that assignment desk editor who really didn't want to know about, this or that or the other, or they were inundated with lots of things, that I had to write the kind of press release that would get their attention. And that's really how I began to develop my writing skills.
And you can see a lot of that in the book also, the way that you write the book. And then also, what are some of the future goals that you have for yourself? 3 to 5 years from now, where will we see you?
Well, one of the things that I would really like to do is to host my own show.
Excellent.
And I really believe that there are so many wonderful things that are going on in our community and in the lives of people that we just don't hear enough of. And so my frustration is just to look at the 6 o'clock, the 11 o'clock news, and you hear all these gory, blood, guts, killing stories. But what about the good news that's going on? So I'd really like to have an opportunity to do that. In addition to that, I'd like to be able to continue to write. There are several other books that are, as I said to you earlier, that are in my spiritual womb that need to be birthed, that deal with, a lot of different issues that I have been touched by in my own life, and I really do write out of my own experience. I also want to begin working more closely with young people, and particularly young women. I really have a passion for seeing them step into, their identity in a way where they're not forced to compromise, and that their self-esteem and their self-worth is on such a level that they can believe in themselves and be able to latch on to those gifts and talents that have been put in them and be able to pursue their dreams and their destiny.
And so when did you decide to accept the call into the ministry?
Well, it was probably about a year or so after my first husband passed away. And I really felt an urging, to begin to really seek God in a more intense way about what now? What am I supposed to be doing now? And I understood, that every life experience is in preparation for, what God would have for you to do next. Yes. And so as I had gone through this tremendous experience, I began to inquire of the Lord, what am I supposed to be doing? And in that, I began to take on opportunities in the church to do different things. And as I began to do that, I found that I was very fulfilled, very passionate about teaching the Word of God, about helping people understand the strength that they can find in the Word of God, and that, again, translating that out of my own experience. Wow. And so that really made me begin to, examine myself and through prayer, seek guidance about what I was to do, and then that was the outcome.
And so you were able to get the answer by seeking prayer and seeking God for the
yes,
answer.
And wise counsel as well. And I don't want to take anything from that. I think you really have to draw upon the leadership that you are under in your local church, because that pastor should be able to see in you what sometimes you can't see in yourself. And that's part of one of the things that God charges that pastor to do, is to be able to see gifts and talents in people. And so through that seeking of that counsel, that's how I was able to recognize that was my next step.
And so what kind of advice would you give to someone that they kind of know that they have some talents and some skills, but they have no idea on how to really find out what it is that they desire to do in life?
Well, I think part of it is just examining what you're currently doing and what is it that really gets you excited. What is it that you feel like you could do day in and day out and not tire at it? What is it that you find rewarding or satisfying? And that's where my journey began. I began to look at those things that I was doing that I really enjoyed, and then that began to give me some clues, if you will, on how I might be able to go forward. If I could do this, and then I found it fulfilling, okay, now let's try this. And so it was a process. It wasn't an instant, wake up one morning and know, you heard the audible voice of God.
Well, the ground was shaking,
that's right,
the thunder.
That's right, the sky parted, No, it was a process of me really earnestly seeking to know what I needed to do, and then, talking with those who knew me and could see into my life.
And they gave you some great advice and some great tips on things that you can do. And then you not only listen to what they say, you actually put action.
Absolutely. So that it's not something that you can just talk about. But as I say, you must put some feet to your faith and begin to do some things based upon what you believe you're to do.
That is excellent. So those people that are actually watching that have a desire to write a book, what kind of advice would you give?
I would say, first of all, do some research. Begin to find out, what kinds of books are already out there. Make yourself knowledgeable about what is already available and begin to identify what is it that you want to say that would make someone want to read your book. If you can't answer that question confidently, then you probably need to wait a while until you can answer that question, because people are going to take the time to read something that they can identify with, something that's going to educate them, something that speaks to an interest or a passion that they have. And if your book doesn't do that, then you will have done this great work, but it really won't be effective.
And isn't it interesting how your past background in communications and public relations and marketing have all led up to what it is that you're doing today?
Oh, that is so profound. I believe that God has a plan and purpose for everybody's life, and there's nothing that is a coincidence or that's fate or happenstance. He literally orders your steps, and so out of your experiences, He shapes and molds you to get to your destiny.
That is phenomenal. And you are a walking testimony of somebody that is an overcomer, but that has that strength. Now, I know you didn't do it alone, and I think we talked earlier about your mother and the role that she played. Can you share with us about that experience?
Sure. I'm the youngest of 4 children, and so as the other children kind of left the nest, my mom and I developed a close relationship. But as I began to deal with the situation with my husband being HIV positive, that really caused us to be close, because she was the only person in my family at that time that I told before the wedding. And that took a great deal of trust, because those of us who are mothers know we want the best for our children. We want to protect our children. And so for her to still be supportive of me in the midst of that kind of circumstance took a great amount of faith and courage on her part. And she stood with me through the entire experience.
Isn't that wonderful that we can always count on a mother's love?
Absolutely.
So we have about a minute left. Can you give us your contact information again for people that are interested in contacting you?
Sure. I can be reached on the web at www.juliettedavis.org, and Juliette is JulietteDavis, or you can send me an email at jdavisministries@aol.com.
And thank you so much for being a guest. I hope that you'll come back, and you know that you're welcome to come on the Renee Bobb radio show on artistfirst.com. We welcome you to be a guest on that show also. And we thank you, the viewing audience, for tuning in today. If you think there's a possibility that you may be HIV positive, go ahead and get tested. Step out on faith and get tested so you know your status. Thanks again for tuning in. Be sure to come back. And again, you can send us any comments or questions that you have to bobbrenee@yahoo.com. Thank you so much, and let today be the day that you turn your dreams into reality. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.